You're all aware that Hulk smashes, but what many of us forget is Hulk smashed Betty Ross's heart so much she became Betty Banner. One half of a tragic love story that we're exploring today on Detecting the Marvelous.
This makes it sound like it was a very sweet, special, romantic episode.
Yeah, should have released this one on Valentine's Day. And I was realizing, I wrote Hulk smashes Betty, and then I'm like, oh wait, I need to really think. I was like, that sounds like way dirtier than the intention was.
Yeah.
I was like, there's gonna be a fan fiction in this one. Is that what he's gonna? Is that?
Yeah, I'm like, that my slash fiction about Betty and Hulk.
Yeah.
That would be traumatizing. That's just ugh.
Tonight we're talking about Matt's fan fiction of it's just like a romantic comedy, Hulk and Betty.
Yeah.
Super sweet.
Yeah.
No deeper, sadder emotions explored whatsoever.
Yeah, that's me. So Dan, what inspired you to choose this issue?
I think because, I don't know about now, but certainly I think as a kid, this was my favorite single issue. I remember because it came out 96. I would have been 10. And it's interesting because I've never really had a major, other than a goldfish dying, I'd never had someone really close to me dying. I guess a neighbor's wife. But yeah, it was never it wasn't something that was really death wasn't an issue that was necessarily on my mind or whatever, but it just really, I think it just was kind of this first way of seeing grief really being explored in something I was reading. And I thought it just really hit me. Also, it being a comic book issue where no one's getting punched throughout the issue, and it's in a Hulk issue. There's no major battle or anything like that happens. It's a lot of exploring emotions and discussing things. But yeah, so I think it really stood out to me, and I've gone back and I'd read it every now and then, and it still holds up for me.
Awesome. Well, you made me feel very old because this came out when I was 22. But let me, for those who aren't as familiar with the Hulk's history, let me share a bit about old school Hulk, and then you can let the audience know about sort of what led up to this issue and give us a recap.
Sounds good.
All right. Now, written by Peter David and Angel Medina, inks by Robin Riggs, colors by Glynis Oliver, lettering by Richard Starkings, and editors Bobby Chase and Bob Harris. We are pulled into the traumatic world of Betty Banner Nee Ross. Before this interesting team took up the mantle, though, there were many creators of the Jolly Green Giant, the Grey Hand of Fate, the Hulkmeister General. Look, this is set in the 90s. I've got to get off my kind of rhyming and weird little nicknames. Originally created by Stan Lee and the amazing Jack Kirby. This started as a pretty rote Jekyll and Hyde story with their signature twist. The struggle with rage, the drive to overcome monstrous nature, the drive to do good even when raging. The Hulk got his introduction very early in the new Marvel era, with him showing up in the Fantastic Four #4, which Dan previously brought to us, literally in the margins of the book.
Yeah. Boy, you've never seen something like the Hulk. And
the Hulk's coming. Yes. Literally in the now, growing from a rage monster to an exploration of DID, dissociative identity disorder, the Hulk is much more nuanced than Hulk Smash. It's kind of an interesting, the different takes and how it evolved. In a 1979 interview with the BBC. Lee said, well, one day I had to do too much to eat and drink, I guess. But no, what really happened is we made so many characters and superheroes. We were looking for something new to do. I'd always loved Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and I loved Frankenstein. Now, to me, the monster in Frankenstein was really the hero. He was nice. He didn't want anybody to hurt anybody. He went around patting kids on the head. It's the idiots with the clubs and the torches who used to chase him around the countryside. So I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a monster who's the good guy, you see, and let him change into Jekyll and Hyde, back like Jekyll and Hyde back into a normal person. So it actually is inspired by the classics, which is an oddly humble statement for Stan Lee to make. Like so, yeah, I was impressed. Kirby's take on the character, though, I think speaks more at what lays in the heart of the Hulk. There are people that I didn't like, but I saw them suffer and it changed me. I
Mm.
promised myself I would never tell a lie, never hurt another human being, and I would try to make the world as positive as I could. And I think that's what lies at the core of the Hulk.
Oh wow.
The character, struck such a nerve culturally. He would be on an 80s TV show, in some cartoons, multiple movies, The Maestro, Mr. Fix It, Planet Hulk, and a bunch of iterations, all before we arrived at our current Ruffalo Smart Hulk. Um, now,
Small.
during this, yes, Shulk. Yeah. So, but during this journey, we got Peter David and Angel Medina's take on the Hulk. Peter David, born September 23rd, 1956, he won an Eisner in 92, a Wizard Fan Art Award in 93, a Huckster Award in 96, a Julie Award in 2007, and the GLAAD Media Award in 2011.
Oh.
He is the grandson of Jewish immigrants who fled Germany in the 1930s after their shoe store was attacked and vandalized. He was born in Fort Meade, Maryland. His father was a journalist. His mother was one of the scientists who worked with James Watson and Francis Crick in figuring out what DNA was.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and
That's a
that
neat.
is who. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that's such a neat connection, considering Peter David
Yeah.
is like the Incredible Hulk writer.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, and like so much science is tied into the character, and he credits his mother with his sense of humor. Um, he fell in love reading Casper and Wendy at the barber shop, and then found Superman. His parents actually wanted to keep him away from superhero comics, especially Marvel comics, because they didn't like monsters in their comics. David read them in secret. Eventually, his parents caved, and he started writing, inspired by his father. He began by reviewing movies. From an early age, he was very progressive with his views regarding LGBTQ plus struggles. He wrote for Asimov's science fiction in 1980. Wrote a few op-eds for the New York Times. Um, while working at Marvel, he attempted to sell multiple stories because he originally got a job as a salesman working in their shipping department, and
Oh
they
wow.
wouldn't let him do it because they're like, you're in sales, you don't get to write stuff. But Jim Owsley was impressed, and he bought Spectacular Spider-Man number 103, The Death of John DeWolf, um, and a career was born. He wrote for Spider-Man, Incredible Hulk, and he had 12 years, a 12-year run in the Hulk. Growing up, he had a queer friend in junior high and high school, and he fought for positive representation in all of his works and in the industry in general. Angel Medina, born March 26, 1964, he worked first for Megaton, First Comics, Marvel, and Image, and has drawn Berserker, Megaton, Dreadstar, The Incredible Hulk, Warlock and the Infinity Watch, Avengers, Spider Man, Sam and Twitch, and Spawn, as well as Kiss, Psycho Circus. So he's a very interesting artist. We get some very interesting visuals. But Dan, do you want to let folks know sort of how we get to the story in this issue and what happens in this issue?
For sure. So I think you need to go through a recap of this is Hulk 441, and so Hulk 440, which is funny because I never read it. Like I got this one just randomly off the shelf, because Hulk 441 was called like Hulk Fiction, and I was like, oh, I hadn't seen Pulp Fiction, but I guess I got the reference, and
I'd hope not at 10, to be
yeah,
frank.
for sure. And like, and I guess maybe it was I was like about to go through puberty, and like the way She Hulk looked on the cover, I was like, oh boy, I better get this. Um, so I think maybe that also influenced it. And it also like opened my eyes to She Hulk. Thank you, by the way, also for that background on Peter David. I didn't know that. I didn't know about his involvement, with fighting for LGBTQ rights. I didn't know, about his whole background, but I do feel like he is the Hulk writer, and like that Peter David Angel Medina team was kind of the team that got me into Hulk comics when I was younger. So basically, right now there's this terrorist organization called the Alliance, led by this guy Omnibus, and the world is on a brink of nuclear Armageddon because of them. And so Hulk has this plan. So he like grows a beard and calls himself the Maestro, not to be confused with Bradley Cooper's Maestro, uh, but Bradley Cooper, who grows a nose and calls himself the Maestro. Anyhow, uh, but he like who is like also known in other comics as like a futuristic version, like a possible future of the Hulk. So he announces himself as the leader of the group, and Thor, having recently had his powers restored, he had lost them, he got them back. He goes off to fight the Hulk in the north, kind of to drag him away from everyone else. So they're up in like the Arctic Circle kind of area, I believe. And then so a lot of people like Doc Samson and who's like the Hulk as a therapist, kind of like big strong therapist guy, and everyone else like they all think like the Hulk has gone insane, he's lost his mind, but Betty reveals that Hulk had explained to her that he's going to do this basically to give the world a scapegoat for like him to be the enemy to stop nuclear annihilation of everything, and he's going to draw all the heat towards himself. And so there's this army guy, Matt Talbot, who's watching this. And so the original plan, he works out with Thor's for have Thor go into this berserker god rage, and just like lightning the hell out of the Hulk and destroy him. But they try it and it doesn't work. And so Hulk and Thor, they keep battling, and they're both like stronger and stronger and really destructive, but no one's getting defeated. And so he sees it. He sees them both as threats to the world, and just orders a plane to drop an atomic bomb on them. And the Hulk sees the bomb coming and throws Thor clear of the blast while getting hit. And then everyone thinks he is dead for good. But when Betty is comforted, she just laughs it off, like, because it's like, whatever. People always say Bruce is dead and he can't die, and et cetera, et cetera. So here we go. We start in Sunville, Florida, where Betty Banner lights a candle and starts for basically as like a guide for Bruce, and starts typing on her computer, Bruce and I. And there are paparazzi staked outside her house, and She-Hulk comes in. They take her photo, and she breaks their cameras and threatens them. Um, Interesting. So like she talks about the paparazzi being scum and vultures. So this was published May 1996, a year before Princess Diana's death. So it
Wow.
was like at the like time when like paparazzi, I guess, was becoming a big thing, but hadn't become like life threatening, so to speak, in certain ways. Uh, so then we go to Army headquarters, and Matt Talbot is celebrating the death of the Hulk. And then Henry Gyrich comes in, who I can't remember if we saw him recently in something else we'd read. Uh,
X-Men.
X-Men, that's right. So yeah, he was
Yeah.
in X-Men. That's right, yeah. So he comes in and shows Matt a photo of him firing a gun at an unarmed woman, Betty Banner, and like sort of basically like this is like a something that's gonna bring heat on you, get you canceled. And so then She-Hulk, Walters, she hands Betty her publishing contract, and they talk about Bruce, and where they both feel like he's not really dead, and they know that he wasn't some terrorist as the public's painted him to be. And there's a part where Betty makes a joke and laughs hysterically. which I found like actually was a very relatable reaction in grief. You know, when you're sad of having lost someone, you know, it's almost like a joke amidst the darkness just hits harder than it would be on a regular day, and then you kind of get hysterical and almost laugh maniacally at it before going like returning to your grief. And so there's army personnel. They're digging up body parts from a blast by a cemetery, and someone finds a chunk of a headstone with no body whatsoever and just one word, fury. Which, as a kid, I did not realize. I just thought it was like I thought it was like fury, like the adjective or the verb kind of thing. But I assume this is related to Nick
It's Nick
Fury.
Fury's one of Nick
For
Fury's fake
sure.
graves.
Yeah, so that's what
Oh.
which is what I only realized now, having read it in 2024 for like the 35th time. But there you go. And
Is
so there's
Nick
some fun
Fury
stuff.
actually dead?
He's kind of on the lam at this point. He was like underground. So this is a
Yeah.
transition period for Nick Fury.
Cool.
It's one of the many times, I guess, where Nick Fury pretends he's dead so that he can,
Yeah.
like sort of
Like live on
go.
the moon.
Yeah, don't
Yeah,
have to deal with humanity and yeah.
yeah. And so there's some funny stuff with then Betty writes like these Harlequin romance versions of her relationship with Bruce, and some of them are very fun. Uh, we cut to below the Canadian ice fields where there's this green guy with a big tall head named Omnibus. So he's basically under trial for being the leader of the alliance, although it's not like a regular human trial. There's like it's kind of this like secret trial. They make an OJ reference to just show the spirit of the times. I'm sure they weren't the only comic book that was doing that, but it was very much, yeah, sort of like everyone had to make their OJ reference at this time. And so you go back to Matt Talbot saying like, "Oh, he just shot Betty with stun pellets, and like the president will back him because he got the Hulk." But Guy Ritchie is saying the president won't go down with him, and this scandal is going to go nationwide in a few hours. So it is really, yeah. So it is like basically also it's someone getting like canceled before, I guess canceling was the thing that we said, but like yeah, like he's basically going to get dropped from this thing. But I think that's the last we hear of him in this issue. And then Betty writes a Pulp Fiction parody about her and Bruce dancing. She writes this like Disney-esque romance about her and Bruce Cliff, where she's kind of dressed like Belle from Beauty and the Beast, which I'm sure is intentional. Meanwhile, She-Hulk is on the phone with Doc Samson. She keeps calling Lenny about tracking down Bruce in New Mexico, but he can't find him. And then he gets attacked by a bunch of shadows, which sets up the next issue. There's a Babylon 5 reference in there. And by the way, and I guess spoiler alert for 442, for whatever reason, the shadows end up being them fighting Molecule Man. They kind of go away. They don't really come up in the next thing. It just switches to Molecule Man. And then, yeah, it goes back to Betty. And so she's writing a version of her as a nun dealing with the last time the Hulk had been quote unquote killed, where she says, "The previous time Bruce had been taken from me." And it's a very sweet, thoughtful piece of her asking God to either take the pain from her or to return Bruce to her. And that if he did something awful, to forgive him. And if she did something awful to deserve this feeling, to please forgive her too. And it ends with her with the candle she's lit every night to guide Bruce home. And I'm gonna go cry, but it was a very sweet episode that I really liked.
It's what it's like. First off, it's like, hey Matt, here's a whole bunch of references from your first year of university.
Yeah,
Going on because I mean it's like kind of offset. Like the references are a little bit dated because like Pulp Fiction was like 94 and stuff like that. But it's just like what's hot at the time, and this was probably written when that would have still been much more ready, like press. But
yeah,
the art also is very of the moment because Medina, you can tell he drew for Spawn because there's a lot of weird proportions and exaggerated features that it's a very
yes,
90s comic book thing.
especially in the trial, like all the jury members
Yeah.
in the trial have
Well,
all
they're
these
not
like
humans. They're all mutants. They're all
right, yeah.
mutants. So
But you'll
yeah,
see like
but
someone with like a jaw that's like a teensy tiny jaw and like a big like It's almost like their head is
Yeah.
like an upside down triangle or like a light bulb shape.
Yeah. I think I've got to. I don't. I remember Gyrick was the Avengers CIA handler. I remember that. I can't remember. I think
Right.
those are all like the leader. Like they're all mutants, like the leader who were affected by gamma radiation.
Mm.
So they've all deformed like that. Like you've got a purple person, and you've got all these weird, different mutated people. Um, But yeah, like some I loved the first image though. This you don't see this in comics very often. First person image of Betty lighting the candle.
Mm.
So it's like through her eyes you see her hand holding the light that's lighting the candle and her reflection in the window kind of thing. So it's very
Yeah.
touching.
And it's also like the entire issue is from Betty's perspective, and you don't really ever get stuff from that where like Betty is the main perspective.
Yeah.
And especially like just in I think a lot of superheroes, especially with the male superheroes, you rarely get the like the love interest, the like damsel in distresses, like so to speak,
Yeah.
point of view. And so I thought that was it was very well done the way he Peter David did that. I thought.
Yeah. Shara, what did you think of it?
I this is one that I really liked. It felt a lot chiller. Obviously, there was no punching and stuff, and it felt like they had like the moments with the graveyard and with the trial. I think
Mm.
on a first read, those things went over my head a little bit more,
For sure. Me
because
too.
the story was with Betty. I found it
Mm.
comical at times. Like, of course, there was this big grief that she was dealing with, but then it was like, okay, what are the ways that she deals with that grief in her writing? And the first thing that she does is writes this over sexualized like fanfic,
Yeah.
and she's like, nope,
Yeah.
nope, 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 backwards, get back, backface. That was really nope.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very funny and also kind of relatable. Like you're trying to see how you can. And like Matt, on your other podcast, we talked about like different ways to deal with grief in art
Mhm.
and how difficult that can be. And I found an interesting humor in the way that she did it. And that last nun scene was really
Mm.
this culminating thing of, oh, in her writing she's asking for either forgiveness or to just have an answer, find that knot in a bow, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think yeah, like there was like a lot of humor from her perspective, even for something that is like so, like it's yeah, like it's the death of like a loved one, but like she's dealing with it sometimes in ways that are really funny, and even then, like she kind of sees the humor where she's like, "Oh, I gotta switch to decaf," and then like deletes.
Well, I found it so she did become a nun in the comic book at one point. So that's
Like
Okay,
who
actually
is
right.
a real life perspective when
Huh?
she was mourning for Bruce, thinking concerned because that's how she rebelled against her father, who later becomes Red Hulk, and she becomes Red Hulk at one
Oh, I didn't
point
realize.
also.
Oh, yeah, I never realized that was actually part of the canon because all the other stuff was
Yeah.
made up. I assumed.
Yeah,
Oh,
because I mean, one was Pulp Fiction, one was Gone with the Wind,
right. That's it.
or Gone with the Wind, maybe like Little Women, like Heathcliff kind of stuff, like
Yeah.
or so it was like some kind of fiction-y Victorian mashup. Um,
Mm.
but I mean, but yeah, like that was her moment of like, okay, I'm going to be honest. I'm not like she got that advice from Rick, right? Who wrote a
Yeah.
book, became a millionaire, and like everybody in the '90s became a talk show host, like Joan Rivers.
Yeah. He's got a like
That's
a trashy talk show.
yeah. So you mentioned the Babylon 5 reference. So we had so there was a general soap kind of reference with the Miami Vice suit and the pinup girl kind of cowboy outfit she was wearing in the one interpretation. You have a Pulp Fiction reference, a Star Trek reference, Gone with the Wind reference, Babylon 5, which I'll get to. So Rick is going to become a talk show host, right?
Yeah.
And they're checking out. I don't know who he's with. I'm not that familiar with Hulk, but he was checking out the set. He's like, "Oh, we want to get our band, the Generators." Well, the Generators are a real band.
Whoa.
Star Trek Generation.
No, Jenne, or where is it? No, it's like the Generators, but spelt like Jen.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Oh, right. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So the Generators are a band that consists of is a sort of rock blues band, which contains Bill Mummy from Lost in Space and Babylon 5, and Miguel Ferrer from Twin Peaks and Thundercats. So it's like two actors and a couple of musicians. The actors are music, but I'm like, there's a lot of Babylon 5 tie-in here. So I'm
Oh
like,
wow,
this,
yeah.
but yeah. So it was a real band that contained a cast member of
Oh, I
Babylon
didn't know
5.
that. Oh, neat.
Yeah,
Hilarious.
yeah. That was well. It's just like I was like, is this a real band? So I started doing digging, and I mean, I know a lot of pop culture from my youth. I did not know that. I mean, I knew the band seemed familiar, but I didn't really know that much about it.
Oh,
But yeah,
interesting.
so it was kind of weird. It's that the weird connections with different things there, and the heavy dose of pop culture.
Yeah, like he really like inserted a lot of that. Yeah, like just so many references in there. It also
Yeah.
reminded me, I feel like in the 90s, in this time, there was like a lot of, and with Peter David, there's not too many bubbles, like, so it's not like crowded. Like, I mean, one of the first issues we did when Matt showed like us some early 90s X-Men where there was lots of like dialogue bubbles and lots of pockets, or pouches. And so now like he's like scaled it back, I feel like, where Peter David has found like just the right amount of dialogue and description,
Yeah.
without having, yeah, like without it being too much, but still packing a lot of like story into this one issue. Because even
I
if they
don't think
didn't
there
have,
was. I don't think there was any descriptive text, was there? Like it was all dialogue driven.
I
yeah,
maybe
and if
a
there is,
little
yeah,
bit.
it's either dialogue or inner monologue.
Oh,
Sorry.
there's like
Yeah.
meantime far beneath Canadian fields. Like there's stuff like that.
Right.
In
Yeah.
the description, but it's very far in between. Like it's very few far in between. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think you're right. I didn't even think about that. There's like none of that. And then it's all just, other than like just a little bit of Betty's inner monologue, which mostly is then through the writing. So yeah, like it
Yeah.
is really, yeah, like it is like he really, I think, I don't know, like it really flows in there. And I think like there's enough story just in the Betty stuff alone that you wouldn't even
Mhm.
need the other side things, but they're part of like the overall like other arcing overarching story stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
But it like the that's just how much he crammed in. So he's able to like do the other stuff that like has to be in there for the sake of like larger arcs with what's going on in the Hulk canon, but like is able to then still have so much story that's Betty related and dealing with her grief.
On a bit of a tangent, it's nice to see Rick like kind of winning for a change because he was sort of
Yeah.
like the Jimmy Olsen of the Marvel universe for the longest time.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
when the Hulk was a early member of the Avengers, he was like the Avengers fan club leader and stuff. So it's like
Yeah.
he wrote a tell-all book, which again, one of the most '90s things to do,
Yeah.
and then became the late night host. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And there's one issue I remember where like I think it's the Hulk becomes, it's a little bit later where like the Hulk becomes like a horseman for Apocalypse, or something
mhm,
like that, and then Rick is trying to like coax the Hulk down, and the Hulk smacks him, and he flies and basically like breaks his neck, like smashing into a brick wall. So like Rick really does get like knocked around and really gets like screwed over a lot. So it is nice to be like, oh well, like he's got a trashy talk show, but at least he's got a talk show and he's doing well and he's
yeah,
back on his feet and
yeah. But he just something about him in that like we don't see much. He's like Kirk to Enterprise, go kind of thing. Like when he answers his phone, and it's just like you annoy me on some level. You just like really annoy me. You are a douche. I just know it. But yeah, I thought just and the again like we were talking about grief. It was very relatable. It was very understandable. Like Betty is kind of in denial there, but by the end she seems to be starting to find resolution.
yeah, I thought so.
You find
Yeah.
it?
Do you
Yeah.
have any further thoughts on that, Shahara?
I no, honestly, it felt almost hopeful at the end. Like she
Mm-hmm.
felt like he was gonna come back, even like, and I wonder how long she's gonna continue lighting that candle for. It's very very interesting in that way. The character of Omnibus is so weird to me. Um, and that's all I gotta say. Like, I have no idea. Like, it's funny because I have no idea the context at all. Um, and I've never seen a character like this where has a pickle for a head, basically.
Yeah.
And then
Like
Well,
there's
yeah, and then another green character who I was wondering if this is a Hulkish character as well. This like green haired.
the gamma radiation green is like a side effect of that. So you also see this with the leader, who we'll see in the next Captain America movie. Um, and head swelling seems to be a kind of a common side effect as well,
yeah.
because the leader's got a really tall forehead also.
Yeah,
There's
there's another
also
character? Yeah.
oh no, I was gonna say just another like green pickle-headed character in actually who's in Fantastic Four and who would be one of my dream roles to play in a movie is Impossible Man, and so
Ooh.
he's this like alien from like he's a Popopian from like this like distant planet that I think
Ah.
Galactus might
Mhm.
have ate his planet, and he like has this like unending knowledge of like he's basically like a walking pop culture reference from like US pop culture history, and I think that he'll like shapeshift into like different characters and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
But yeah, he's like just but he's another like green pickle headed character as well because he is just like he's got like a long chin and then a tall head as well.
Looks like a little
They're his. So
alien.
the only difference between him and Omnibus is Omnibus's head is at the bottom of the pickle, and Impossible Man's head is like in the his face is in the middle of the pickle.
Yeah, he's like
That's
a
how I
little
would describe it.
alien guy. He looks like has pointy ears and big eyebrows like that. Is this Impossible Man? I'm looking at Google images of him,
Yeah, yeah,
and he
but
has a
yeah,
big thumbs down, like "Oh, I'm bad," like that.
yeah, but yeah, he's like a mischievous character instead of like an evil character. Yeah.
Gotcha. That's cool. And who is the character in those trial scenes who have like he has green hair and green? He's not a Hulk character, is he? Or is he just a judge?
Oh yeah, the guy who's like running the trial. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen. He almost looks like a green like Gambit in a way. Like
Yeah.
Has that same kind of like helmety thing that makes the hair stick up.
Hmm.
yeah, that's what I kept thinking. Yeah. But
Okay,
yeah, I
cool.
don't
I
know
didn't
him
know.
as a character outside of that.
Okay, cool. I wondered
Yeah,
if he was more substantial because he is green. I don't know, but there's a lot of green
Uh,
characters in this one.
I have to
yeah,
go back and reread around that the other issues before and after.
yeah.
I one of the things I would have it would be interesting to see explored is the life of a partner of a superhero, like a human partner,
Oh,
Right.
and
Yeah.
what that would entail. Because I mean, it is like one of my favorite Batman spin-offs was Gotham Knights, which was a police procedural, all from the perspective
Was
of the
it Gotham
Gotham PD
Central?
or Gotham Central, and then there's
Yeah,
Gotham Knights
yeah.
followed that. Sorry, yeah.
But yeah,
So
where it's
Gotham
like
Central, yeah,
yeah, it's like The Wire but in Gotham. Like
yeah,
it
yeah,
and
and it's like
I was gonna say, and also because we've spoken speaking about Peter David and LGBTQ representation, there's a one of the main police officers in that is a lesbian in Gotham
yes,
wow.
Central,
yeah,
and she's also in Birds of Prey, and I'm
and
forgetting
she
the
became
name,
Oh, her.
and
Rosie Perez
Rosie
plays her,
Perez.
doesn't she? Yes.
yeah, and she becomes the Question. She
Oh,
takes
okay,
over
Oh.
cool.
as the Question. Her and her partner becomes Fate or something like that. Doctor
Okay,
Fate. I don't know. They become hero characters.
yeah. But I do
So
love that.
yeah.
I do love Gotham Central, and also written by one of my faves, Ed Brubaker.
Hmm.
Um,
Mhm.
but that is cool. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Like, I'd love to see more of that. I actually made a short film about a guy
Ooh.
who's dating a superhero once, and so like that is something that I would be very interested to see, like a run, like if they did a run from like Betty's perspective, or like it's just like a Mary Jane comic book, or
Yeah.
or someone else who's yeah like married or dating a major superhero.
Did they ever do a Mary Jane comic book? Because that seems like a fantastic idea that I feel like they should have done.
No, I mean, she's featured prominently in the Gwen Stacy, Spider Gwen, Ghost Spider,
Yeah.
Spider Woman stuff.
Yeah.
Like she's the lead singer of the Mary Janes
Oh, good for
because
her.
of like that's her band,
Yeah.
and Gwen is the
Mhm.
drummer. But there's no, because I mean, yeah, there's never been a Mary Jane centric. There've been one shots and stuff, but never full series.
Yeah, it would be cool to see like a full series where you really delve into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, any other thoughts? Anything anybody wants to share before we hulk out?
No, thanks. Yeah, thanks for indulging me in this. For this, like, where I wanted to do just like a one issue. You know, we did one with Ben with
Mm-hmm.
Wolverine. So this was when we were doing that. I'm like, oh, I like this is like a one issue one that I'd like to do.
Well, I mean, it's always cool to see, like, 'cause there's always like one. It may be like not an entire run or an entire line, but like individual issues that can really grab you. So it's
Mm.
cool to sort of like really hyper focus in on that one and dig into it. So yeah,
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
This is
Yeah,
a really
right.
sweet one, and thank you
Yeah.
for it.
We need some sweetness every now and then. Yeah, not just punching.
All right, time to hulk out. I got to go and write my fanfic where I wear that Miami Vice suit that Bruce
Yeah.
was wearing in that one fantasy.
Oh my
Perfect.
god.
Thanks for listening, everyone. You've been listening to Detecting the Marvelous, a Far From Here and ShowbizMonkeys.com co-production. Your producers are Dan Rosen, Matt Erdill, and Shaharah Ghaznavi. Music by Glenn Bouchamp and art by Ben Steamroller. Thanks for listening, and remember, true believers, Excelsior!